doing just that.
Ask the questions. It's your body, it's you. Make sure you ask the questions and get an understanding. Don't give up. I equate it to being a pit bull. Dig in there because it is your health. Just, don't give up on that.
Make healthy lifestyle choices. Educate yourself. It's your best defense. Cancers detected early are easier to treat. For more cancer answers, go to the Moffitt Cancer Center website at moffitt.org or call 1-888-663-3488.
It's hard to talk to you.
1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear on 1010 WOLB
are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
Radio show, and of course I'm your host Hassan Giordano, aka Mr. Politics, is in the building, and we have a power pack program in store for you today. Are you comfortable with police having guns in your children's school? That's what we past Thursday. It's been years, but this past Thursday they had a special public forum down there at the main school facilities. We're going to be talking to former Waverly PTO President Joseph Kane and how he got ousted as president by his own wife, and the president of the school police's Fraternal Order of Police, Sergeant Clyde Boatwright. But before we get into that discussion, we want you to know that this program is brought to you by those masterful political strategists at Politicom Strategic Solutions. Successfully helping candidates get elected since the 1970s, Politicom has mastered the art of political communications and become Maryland's premier campaign consultant team. If you're looking to get elected in 2020, Mr. Kane, make sure you want to contact them today. 240-242-7505. Joining me in the studio, as usual, are my two co-hosts, the Legal Eagle, Ivan Bates, and the Union Boss of Bosses, Mark McLaren. What's happening, Captain?
Hey, what's up, my brother? How's Baltimore doing and everybody doing today?
Oh, all is well. And, of course, joining us in the back, as always, our producer, the main man that makes it all go boom, Jason Rodriguez. What's happening, man? I see you over there running around doing 100 different things.
Our co-host continuing to come in late, folks.
How you doing?
Yeah, you about to get fined. You know what? That's what we're going to start doing every day. It doesn't matter. That's too late. Man, what we tell y'all to be at 3:45, right?
Traffic's terrible, and it's raining outside.
It doesn't matter. We're going to put
Jason,
starting tomorrow, the fine jar goes right here.
Detention.
Well, I need to put money in it right now.
Right. Let me make a prepay.
So we want to get into this, right? Joining me into the studio today, of course, as I mentioned, we have one who's a dedicated school activist. He's shown his political prowess over the past few years, especially working within the Waverly community. And I want to talk about, and of course I'm talking about Joseph Kane, but we were just talking about, and I promoted this as you are the Waverly PTO president, which I've always known you as.
Right.
But you got beat. By your own wife.
Listen, we run a very competitive household. We promote that competition, and my wife, she had one up on me this time, and that's okay,
Well, I tell you what, if you ever do run for elected office, you better hope that she doesn't. You might be in trouble.
They like her more than me,
Yeah. And of course, on the other side of the conversation, but I think they agree more than they disagree on everything else, is a stalwart leader in the African-American community for decades and a voice for law enforcement and school police for just as long, Sergeant Boatwright. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and it's always good to see you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want to just jump right into the discussion. I know a lot of people have been on Facebook, social media, chiming in. They've been really going in on this conversation, and we need to really talk about this. So for those who are listening, the inception of the school police in Baltimore happened in 1991, House Bill 732. It was the sworn police force, the only one of its kind in Maryland. and had full arrest powers within city limits. They were permitted to carry guns, but with certain restrictions. Those restrictions, especially after 9/11, weren't really adhered to. Some people didn't even know they actually existed, that they were in violation of state law. And then that led to a further discussion back in, I think it was 2014. We had H.Bill 101 and Senate Bill 17 that came out of that. Once that bill, and what that was going to do was that back then, CEO of the city schools, Dr. Gregory Thornton, at the time, wanted to kind of eliminate that language to be able to have those guns within those school facilities. But as soon as the public got a hold of it, it was a lot of ruckus. Of course, a lot of misinformation and information went out there, and that bill ended up being tabled. Sergeant Boatwright, I know back then you were a leader on trying to make sure that this happened. I think, if I'm not mistaken, back then you even warned that the blood of our babies will be on the bill's opponent's hands if the bill was not passed. You're very compassionate about this issue. Why? Where do we stand now, and why have you been such a stalwart leader on having guns within our city schools?
So when that bill was introduced, it was to clean up language that was old and antiquated. This is Baltimore. Let's just look at the reality of our city and the fact that we are a dangerous city. And our school police officers had dual roles. Our officers are police officers in the building, but they have the responsibility to react to anything that happens in their presence. And to have an unarmed police officer is simply just adding another victim. So how do we get here? The decision makers down in Annapolis made the decision to table the bill because there wasn't enough public input. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Thornton ordered town halls all over the city. From those town halls, it was less discussion about why our officers should have been armed, but more discussion about arrest numbers and more discussion about our training and the policies and procedures. That was the focus of those town halls by the members that showed up. But these forums were supposed to have been about why school police officers should be armed. Mm-hmm. So we're now here because I guess it's evident that our officers really, really need to be armed, because since that bill fell, since House Bill 101 fell, Senate Bill 17, since it was tabled because there was never a vote, we've recovered 19 handguns and rifles and shotguns, all included, 19 weapons since that bill was introduced in the 2016 General Assembly. So to have 19 guns in Baltimore City schools, we're doing numbers that no other jurisdiction is seeing. And it's really, really, really unfortunate that out of the 24 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland, only one, and that's Baltimore City schools, do not have armed police officers in school.
That's interesting. That's something that I didn't know either. And Joe, so, to his point, I agree with the sergeant. I think I've always agreed, and I'm staying out of it and trying to stay neutral as the host. But I have children in the school system. And if, God forbid, a madman jumps in the building to run to go get a gun out of a lockbox, by the time you get back, they didn't shut up the whole school. What's the issue on the opposite side? Why are y'all so passionate about not having the schools in the school system, guns in the school system?
Yeah, for me, I have 4 children in Baltimore City schools, and their safety is my utmost concern, right? First of all, I'd like to say that while it took some time, Baltimore City School Police is the best in Maryland. Not because we have the only school police in Maryland, but because of under the leadership of Chief Ham and Dr. Santelises, we've been the most progressive in the last 2 years of how we deploy our officers in service to our schools. So it's no coincidence that over the last 2 years, when we put our guns away, that you've seen the complaints against officers go down. You've seen less incidents of use of force. Those things have went down. So you've seen students reply and say, hey, 70% of our students, according to a survey by Youth as Resources and the Algebra Project, say, hey, we support our officers. But we have some room, some areas to grow within use of force. A lot of them saying that they still use force when they're trying to deal with the students and so forth. So we have the most progressive school police force, I say, in Baltimore City, but that's because we put our guns away. For 15 years, we've walked around with illegally carrying guns and using that sense of force in our schools, and it kind of created the atmosphere where we've had the 500 to 1,000 arrests and so forth. So I would say that over the last 2 years, we've done great work. We've done improving our schools. I think we need to continue that route of like leaving guns out the equation. We have our officers are special. They've really committed themselves to really digging into to being solution makers. How do we deal with the systemic issues and provide those wraparound services and be that quote unquote officer friendly to our students in our schools? So it's a matter of let's not stop something that has proven to work.
Sergeant Bober, I see you over there shaking your head furiously. Why?
The guns in the officers' holsters does not change the approach of the police officer. That is dictated by leadership. When you have leadership, that kind of leadership, and he gives us a message, and that's what our officers are doing. He is saying no longer are we arresting students for disorderly conduct. We're now diverting those out to other resources. We're using other resources other than arrest. It's not because the gun is now in a safe. And I don't want to convolute the issue and say that our guys were running around like Superman and now they hiding in a corner now because they don't have a gun. That couldn't be further from the truth. Hence the 19 guns that we've recovered and the other situations that we've dealt with, like the parent that came up to Douglas High School with an aluminum bat to fight a student that our officer had to engage. So, let's just look at the facts. The arrest numbers are going down because we changed the way we do business. And it's not about whether or not the officer has a gun in a holster.
I mean, part of the way you guys were doing business was with your weapons. So, I mean, it's a contributing factor to like how things have improved.
Can you point to me an incident where the officer's weapon was a factor in making an arrest?
Yeah.
And or
yeah, no, so I think I think where you're looking at it is from a sense of like, did the police officer actually use the weapon to do some type of law enforcement? What we're saying is that, and according to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, if these things have psychological impacts on our students and the people who have those weapons, right? So we need to make sure that we're not creating an environment where Baltimore City already over-polices our city, right? We put too much emphasis on what police officers can do instead of really focusing on what the systemic issues are, right? So in the situation which you're referring to is how name an incident where a police officer has used a gun to kind of enforce some type of law. That's not what we're saying is that that's not the issue here. The issue is that we can't create prisons within our schools. We can't create this environment where we're over-policing our children because those things have impact. Those things have psychological, long-term impact on the city where we already over-police.
But to be fair, Joe, you make it seem like, though, when they had guns, they were just walking around like it was the Wild Wild West, smacking people upside their head with the guns.
I think the data supports that, the ability to have a gun, that mindset that we really install in the officers kind of changes the environment. We saw in 2015, I think, where the officer used the baton to kind of really hurt a student within the school. And I think that the presence of guns being there does something to really empower individuals' guns. They make it a little stronger, right?
So I'm really, really prepared to answer that. If we want to, pick two incidents out that were both adjudicated in the courts, that's what the court system is for.
Yeah.
If you have someone within any profession, because all professions have people that make poor choices, and in this case, the court system handled that. So you're going to indict all of us as police officers for the actions of those that may have made choices that were contrary to what the rules and regulations say?
I don't think that is a necessary indictment on the entire police force. I'm talking about the climate and culture of the police force, right? So we saw when we took away guns from the police, we saw arrest numbers go down. We saw the climate and culture within the school around police officers improve. So what I'm saying is that there's something about the gun, that changes the environment.
That's called leadership. That's called leadership. What you saw is the deputy chief of the police department be named the chief of police, and he had a different message other than the previous administration.
And I agree with you. And part of his message was, let's put the guns away. And part of his message was, put the guns in lock boxes. Let's really use our officers as part of this, to be part of the solution. That's part of the solution.
Let's talk about facts.
Is that Chief Ham?
Yes, Chief Ham. Let's talk about
Is that
facts.
his policy, not to have guns?
Well, no. From what I've been told, he supports his police officers because he knows that we're well trained. We're the best trained police department in the state of Maryland. And here's the reality. For a whole school year, we walked around not assigned to schools. We walked around the exterior of not temporary schools, and assaults on staff and students went through the roof. And you know what? The statement was, we need to get our police officers back, whether they have the guns or not, because it's better to feel safe than to actually be safe. People feel safe by seeing a uniform, but how effective is that police officer when we have a mass casualty incident?
And so that's the thing. We're talking about the systemic issues. Police officers are there under the leadership of Chief Hamm and Dr. Santelises to really get to the core problems of the systemic issues that which have contributed to assaults going down, less arrests, and create this positive environment around our police.
I disagree.
I mean, that's just the nature of the game.
Let me just real quick, and I'm going to bring it right over to you. Just want to let the family know that this show is brought to you by SEIU 500, who wants you to know that Together We Rise is not just a slogan, but rather a blueprint for the future of the union movement. Visit them today at www.seiu500.org. You can chime in on this conversation. You have questions, you have input as a parent, as an outsider, as somebody who just wants to have their voice heard. Call us now, 410-481-1010. Go to our Facebook page. You can chime in right there at DMV Daily News. Watch us live. Put your question right here on it. We're watching it. We'll take your questions there. Mark, go ahead.
So I guess I have a bit of a different take on this, or a different question. I feel like in studying this over the weekend, I feel like it's a little bit disingenuous to say that Baltimore City is the only place without armed police officers, because Baltimore City is the only place with a separate police force for the school. So the armed officers that are in other counties are county officers, right?
Okay.
And so this is the only place that has its own separate. And I have the same question about, the Johns Hopkins force. Why is there the need for a separate armed police force? Why isn't, like, BCPD guns? Why shouldn't it just be BCBD officers like it is in Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County and anywhere else?
Well, here in Baltimore, in 1967, school police was created. School police were created to handle the plants and the buildings. So basically, it was to respond for calls for break-ins and things like that. In the 1960s, in the 80s, there was a discussion, and under Mayor Schmoke, I believe, or Mayor Schaefer, the discussion was we need to move the school police officers into a daily role into the schools. It's not unique anywhere throughout the country. Most major cities have their own school police force.
Okay.
If you look at Miami-Dade, their school police force is robust. If you look at Los Angeles, it's robust. If you look at Cleveland, school police force, they are robust. If you look at other jurisdictions, we're not the exception to the rule.
And can I piggyback on that? I think that's valuable, that fact that we have our own dedicated school police, because they take the time to really understand what it means to be around children, right?
Correct.
And what I'm suggesting is not that we disband the Baltimore City School Police. What I'm saying is that they're doing an exceptional job without their weapons, right? And we need to continue to build on strategies to make our schools safer places, right? Instead of bringing guns into the equation, because we know that adding guns to the equation, it opens up opportunity for mistakes to happen, and there's been countless examples of that across the country. And I know we have the best force in the state, but we need to be very intentional about how we use our police force in a city like Baltimore.
So that's why in our profession, you look at what is the best equipment out there to prevent any type of mistakes. One, we invest in the top-of-the-line holster as it comes to gun retention. So even if an officer is rendered unconscious, you can't get the gun out unless you know the algorithm to get it out. You have to know the angles. You have to know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes.
They got those kind of holsters?
Yes, they exist.
But see, Officer Bolt, right, you're trying to do here, I believe, is, we're talking about prevention. How do we prevent a weapon from entering the school? Whether or not you have the latest technology for holsters is responsive. You end up responding to a crisis situation. I'm looking at how can we be preventive to really secure our schools to prevent weapons from entering into the schools, and that's a two-part answer, right?
So what we're seeing is the metal detectors work. The person walks through the metal detector, it beeps, and it says that there's something there that shouldn't be there. But who's on the other side of that metal detector to stop that person? If a goal-oriented person comes into a school with the mindset that he's going to create mayhem, he's going to walk right through that metal detector, and guess what? That metal detector is going to work.
And we don't have metal detectors in all schools.
Some schools do.
Just some schools.
Some just
not all schools. And I do have a question. Do y'all, now that you can't have actual firearms, do you have any type of tasers or any other kind of weaponry to use in that situation?
We've always had the impact weapon, the baton, and we've always had the pepper spray. And to suggest that an armed person, a person that's armed with a bat. We're not just talking about mass shootings. We're talking about edge weapons, because the last 2 students killed in Baltimore City schools were both stabbed to death. So we're talking about edge weapons. We're talking about baseball bats, which we've recovered, or any type of weapon that could be used as a mass casualty incident. We're talking about harming a lot of people.
And we agree. That's why we say, how do we prevent weapons from entering into our schools? And there was, after the Parkland shooting, right, there was a study done, and they came out with 8 recommendations on, like, how do we really prevent the next school shooting, if you will. And none of the 8 recommendations include the NRA talking points of arming everybody in every school. It includes how do we really get into the minds of our young people to prevent these type of things from happening, providing wraparound services. Maryland is going towards, in particular Baltimore City, we're going towards community schools, right? So how do we take our community school concept and really build those communities to prevent these type of incidents from happening in the first place?
Well, here's the reality of it. The reality of it, you can talk about Parkland. Let's talk about the state of Maryland. Right after the incident that happened in St. Mary's County, the state of Maryland decided to get really, really serious about school safety.
That's right.
Governor Hogan passed a robust bill to allow
Senate Bill 1265.
Senate Bill 12. I testified on the bill, so I'm familiar with it.
That's right.
But he, amongst other bills that I testified on, but he created this avenue to allow schools to beef up their security. Let's, to say, that you got other jurisdictions adding police. We're basically saying, look, if you look at the arrest numbers aren't what they are, but the incidents are still the same. The incidents the calls for service have not decreased. You have 100 police officers securing 163 schools and 183 buildings. 100 police officers. Nobody's beating the door to come in here and be a Baltimore City school police officer based on some of the restrictions you have. That treat you like a police officer, that pay you like a police officer. Why not do that?
I think what is the starting pay for a police officer, by the way?
$44,000.
That's not bad for a career. To start.
44? That's very low.
I mean, for somebody just getting there, coming into the workforce.
But that's not high school graduates, right? Don't you need
they could be
maybe
college graduates, people. Trust me, if you don't got a job, you gonna take $44,000.
Yes, God.
I mean, I think it's responsible to bring up Senate Bill 1265. General Assembly passed it, Governor signed it, and I think part of our strategy should be working together on how do we ensure that the funds that are tied to 1265 are coming back to Baltimore City to make sure that our schools are safe, right? So that's some things that we should be working on around it, and really keeping our progressive. Right, of being able to say, hey, we have school police officers, but they're special here. They're willing. They're going to go ahead and put their weapons inside a safe lockbox while they're at the school system, while they're in the schools, because they believe in the importance of how do we provide those wraparound services and be those role models that our students need and build those relationships with our students. And I think that that's hats off to our school.
So, just so that I'm clear, and I want all the listeners to be clear. So, in the 90s, they tried to pass this bill to have handguns. It really didn't pass. However, handguns were being used by the school police, correct?
So, on 9/11,
Yes.
9/11, we became terrorists. So the superintendent at that time and the chief of police said, look, we'd rather be in a position, worrying about,
the law, right? Breaking the law.
Well,
that little thing.
Well, let's go back and charge. Would you gonna go back and charge them? I mean,
no, that was a different time.
It was a different time.
So officers were carrying guns in the schools for the past 10, 12, 15 years, right? Then Dr. Santalisa comes and she says, we're not going to do that, or was it Chief of Police Ham?
Well, it was actually under Dr. Thornton. When he started the program of our officers being assigned to geographical areas as opposed to being assigned to the schools, the response time was down, incidents went up, and everybody from teachers to students wanted the police officers back in the building in order to provide that safety, that feel of safety.
So my question is, when you look at the historical data for the 15 years you carried guns, were you having incidents where guns were actually being taken out of the holsters and being used?
No.
Okay.
There's no data to suggest that.
Okay. So now it appears to me you're talking about, Mr. Kane, that, hey, I'm not opposed to a handgun being in the school, but it needs to be in a lockbox. Is that what you're saying?
That's
okay.
Correct.
And you're saying, Sergeant, that, hey, my officers need to have the handguns on them specifically. You're saying, Mr. Kane, that, hey, I want to make sure we provide the wraparound services for the students, correct? The people who are there.
Creating that environment.
Now, Sergeant, are you saying you want the guns in the school because of the students, or are you saying you want the guns in the school because of who?
Because of outside potential threats.
Okay.
And that's what, like, we come, I bring this back home. When we talk about the outside potential threats, what are we doing to work together to ensure that the funds from Senate Bill 1265 are coming back to Baltimore to make sure that our schools are safe from external threats? So do we have locks on our doors? Do we have up-to-date security protocols?
Well, that was going to bring my next question. So let me ask you this. Looking at Senate Bill 1265, if each and every single school had the metal detectors and was fully staffed in terms of who can get in and who could get out, would you feel more comfortable, meaning, you know, you in particular, your union, one saying, you know what, we can compromise. Now the schools are fully staffed to make sure we can keep people out.
So it's been my experience, and for the bulk of my career when I was in patrol, I worked in a high school that had 17 entrances into the high school. So it's easy to walk through a metal detector and walk to a side door, prop it open with a rock, go get what you want to bring in, and come back into the side door. And you know what? A security camera, what everybody asks for, they'll have good, clear pictures of you leaving and coming back. That's what the security camera is going to do.
But I have security alarms in my home, and when a door opens right now, if my wife leaves out right now or a child leaves out, I know what door is open and what time and why.
Well, that's a house as opposed to a big school facility with hundreds of people.
And what we're saying is that we need to make sure that we're getting the proper funds from our state government to make sure we have this up-to-date technology to do that.
So let me ask you this. You open the door, and let me ask you this. Do you feel safe in your community?
I mean, so again, all weekend we were looking at ad hominem attacks, right?
I'm asking you a question.
I mean,
you brought the comment about your house and locks. I'm just asking you that question. Do you feel safe in your community?
We all live in Baltimore City, and we know what kind of crime is in Baltimore City.
You're saying the same thing I'm saying, but go ahead.
And I think that we should focus on how do we make sure our schools are safe from external threats, not whether or not I feel safe or you feel safe, but do the kids safer tomorrow than they were today.
So I think your point was getting to, if we can carry guns in our homes for our own safety, why not have guns in the schools for the safety of our children?
No, I think I was getting more or less, if we...
that was a really good point.
The reality of, well, that is a point.
But everybody don't carry guns in their homes.
I was about to say.
That's what I was going to say.
But they're crazy if they don't, especially live in Baltimore City. Go ahead.
But the reality of this
But that's the problem in Baltimore. We haven't addressed the core problems that cause a person to need a gun or that promotes violence in our city. It's not about how many guns we have. Guns to the equation. Exacerbates the situation. Let's get to the root problems. What makes a person want to resort to a gun?
I get the whole, because you referenced the NRA earlier. I get the whole gun control issue and things like that. I get it. But you're talking about disarming the people that you expect to put themselves in between danger and a bullet and a child.
Sergeant Boyd, right. What I'm saying is that we continue doing what we've done and has been successful in for the last 2 years. We've been successful in having the lockbox and officers being able to protect our schools and arrest rates going down and a climate
I'm going to say this.
Going up.
I'm going to say this. We have to get it right every time. The person that wants to hurt somebody only has to get it right once.
Again, another NRA talking point, but I get that,
NRA talking point.
Let's work on how do we prevent something negative from happening in our schools.
All right. We got to go to the line. Lamont, I want to welcome you to the DMVDaily show. What's your thoughts, sir?
How you doing, sir? How y'all feeling? First of all, my personal opinion is this, and I justify it this way. Without a doubt, our schools do need wraparound services. These include social workers, and it includes maintaining the progress and everything like that we've made in the last couple of years. But here's where the rubber meets the road. There are some people that don't care about those wraparound services. I have done research. The last 6 shootings in the city were they went down less than a mile from a public school. I don't know if anybody who's not law enforcement understands what a shootout means here in Baltimore. It doesn't mean somebody gets shot and the body drops. No, normally you have people running for cover, running for danger. Schools are a soft target, an institution where if I'm shot or if somebody who I'm chasing, that's a place where they can easily run into. So here's the question to whoever wants to answer it. When you have your social workers and all these other people who provide wraparound services, which one of them or you yourself as a parent or volunteer, are you willing to jump in front of a bullet for a child that you don't know? Now, if you would, you know what I'm saying, I applaud you. You know what I'm saying? You are a hero, and I pray that never has to happen. But at the same time, if you're not willing to not go home to your children, then why don't you leave it to the professionals who are trained and certified to do that? Make no mistake about it, Baltimore is a war zone. And we have good people and we have bad people here. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, when good people want to do a good thing, you should not take away the tools that they're going to be using to make sure that this is carried out professionally. If a child has an intimidation issue with seeing a firearm by someone who has a uniform and who is certified to carry that weapon, they shouldn't live in Baltimore City, because you see Baltimore City police all over the place.
Thanks for your point, Lamont.
I mean, first of all, I'll reiterate that I think we have the best school police in Maryland, period, probably in the country. And I don't think for one second that a boat right or anybody else, including myself, would jump in front of a bullet to protect a child. I mean, that's as adults, that's our job. And we need to make sure, and I just believe that we should be really doing things to prevent guns from entering our school in the first place.
One thing I do want to say to Brother Lamont is, and this is something I learned through when I was in the Senate working on gun control legislation, to point out that 6 of the last shootings were within a mile of the school in this city. To be honest with you, there are very few places in this city, period, that are not within a mile of one school or another in this city. That's why the gun-free zones had to be taken down, because it was unconstitutional. It was covering the whole city. So
clear up, gentleman's statement, Lamont, who the caller, and I thank him for his comments. But in Baltimore, we have technology called ShotSpotter. Mm-hmm. And when ShotSpotter technology goes off, we've had 8 lockdowns in a little over 30 days of school. 8 schools had to be locked down because a gun was fired within a 2-block radius of a school while it was occupied by students. Mm-hmm. So we don't know the direction that the suspect was running after he discharged the gun, but we're talking multiple discharge. When the ShotSpotter technology goes off, we get an alert over our citywide radios, and all the Baltimore police officers get an alert on their phones that's in that district. It said, hey, 1500 block of Payson Street, 9 shots fired. And that's in front, right close to school number 29 school, and it's close to Carver High School. Mm-hmm. So that technology exists, and 8 times we've had to go in a lockdown.
Yeah, but if response times are poor, like by the time you get there, the incident is over with, you know?
Yeah, but in that situation, but I think you're talking about the lockdown of the schools to make sure that they're secure. And I can tell you, I can't never get in my kids' schools. And they're always locked. And I got a buzz and all that. And that's a good thing, right? You want to be able to be safe. But we got these phone lines.
I was going to say, y'all gentlemen got these lines.
Dave Calloway's on Facebook and says, as a former school police officer, he had to stop an intruder from entering a school with a knife who attempted to stab a student. And he had to draw his firearm in order for him to drop his knife. Donnie, welcome to the DMV Daily Show.
Yeah, man. Are you guys familiar with a gentleman by the name of Guy? Yeah, with their lives, who also had family members and children at home. Brad Guy, 3 years ago, parachuted out of a plane and his chute didn't open, nor did his backup parachute open. He hit the ground from 14,000 feet. Now, he ended up surviving, but I doubt if Brad Guy would tell you that he wants to keep jumping out of a plane and not have his parachute open. You understand what I'm saying?
He took us all the way there to get there.
I guarantee you. And the last thing I want to say, I have a student in Baltimore City Public Schools. I have a middle school student. My middle school student officer does not carry a gun during the school day. His holster is empty. The CEO of public schools has 2 officers with her throughout the entire school day. My question is, why does my son deserve less protection than the CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools? And no one's yet to answer that question for me. Why does my son deserve less protection than the 2 sworn, armed school police who are with the CEO each and every school day from beginning to end?
Great question.
I think it's a great question, and I think that we have to. For me, I think about it differently. I believe that his question is, why does the CEO have 2 armed police security guards with her? She's in an uncontrolled environment. Number one,
she doesn't have security guards with her. That's a big difference.
I mean, so the thing is this for me, whether she has guards or not. I believe that we're offering our children better security than the other counties. Why do you say that, Joe? Because we have a sworn police officer dedicated to Baltimore City Public Schools who have extra training, who are going through the really sensitive training about how do we deal with children who come from certain environments. Other counties don't have that. And so because we have that specialized training and those specialized school resource officers we call police here, we have an ability to really set the standard for what it means to do policing in Baltimore and redefine what we think about policing is. Policing is not about what equipment we have. It's about the outcome of the service we provide. And so when we talk about policing in Baltimore, it's not limited to just having a gun and not having a gun. It's about what kind of impact are you doing to really prevent violence or deter crime. And if you have to, how do you respond to crime?
So if you ever run for office, that clip right there, I'm going to sell it to you. That's all you need to do. Put it on your website and loop it over and over. Go ahead, Sergeant Wolf. Right?
Yeah, so I think back to when you talk about an ill-equipped police force. We had an example on April 27th of 2015 where, there was equipment that was needed that was not readily available to the police officers, and we saw our city on fire. And we also had people in place that told officers to not engage. This is our new Baltimore. Fall back, take a defensive posture, and react. How about preventive? So, and I'm saying being preventive, and I'm echoing what you're saying. That's almost like someone who doesn't go and get an annual physical. That's preventive maintenance. But you want everybody to just go to the doctors after they fall and have a heart attack.
No. What I'm suggesting is that we definitely make sure that we're, quote unquote, going to the doctors before. And for me, that looks like, how do we prevent someone from entering to our school with weapons?
All right. Will Hannah, thanks for calling the show. Welcome to
Brother
the
Will.
Good afternoon.
Brother Will.
Hey, what's going on? I just wanted to say something, and I think a couple of callers, a couple of my points were addressed already, so I'm not going to reiterate those. But I wanted to say this: how many school shootings have there been in Baltimore City?
The last one was in 2002 at Lake Clifton.
Right. And so, how many school police officers are there?
Right now, we're slated for 105, and we have vacancies.
And how many schools are there in Baltimore?
163 schools and 183 buildings.
Okay. So my point is this. So in Baltimore, we've done better than a lot of jurisdictions across the country in not having school shootings. But I think there's a lot of, and I'm saying that not as a negative, I'm saying that as a testament to some of the work that's already being done by the school police.
Right. Sure.
I think that what we have to be cognizant of, though, is that all it's going to take is one time.
That's right.
And if you don't have an armed police officer there for that one time that somebody walks into a school, then are we going to look back and say, well, we should have done something else. We should have done something else.
That's correct.
So, and that's all it's going to take is one time. Because people, as we know, most of the schools in Baltimore City, especially in the urban parts of the city, are in bad neighborhoods where a lot of guys carry guns. And we've been very fortunate that no one has walked into a school and shot up a school. We've just been fortunate. But why wait until that happens to be reactive when we can prevent it now? Or at least put something in place. It may not stop it, but maybe we stop 30 people from getting killed, and maybe 2. But that's what happens. So we can't be reactive there, because all it's going to take is for it to pop up on CNN that somebody in Baltimore and 30 people got killed in the school. God forbid.
That's true, but I gotta say, Melissa Schober's on our Facebook. She was very vocal in this. when this actually happened with the initial bill a couple years ago.
Yes.
And she writes that there is no evidence at all that armed officers deter school shootings. You can look at the Congressional Research Service at real-world examples, too, in terms of Parkland, Santa Fe, and others.
That was a 2013 study.
Yeah. So,
oh, wait, look at the 2000.
But I'd rather have you guys armed instead of school teachers.
What Melissa brings up is that in 2002, a school police officer shot and killed a youth that was 14. The officer pleaded guilty and was convicted of manslaughter. See, that's what some of the concerns are about. I think is that, as we saw in a couple of different instances, and this is not to impugn the integrity of the officers, I think that 99% of you guys are, doing the Lord's work. Starting out at $44,000 a year and dealing with these kids every day is, my God, I really genuinely, I can't agree more. But my concern would be that 2002 incident, or some other incidents where I think there was one where a kid spit on a kid and then he slapped him or something. Like, maybe if there's a gun involved, that escalates in a way that it doesn't if it didn't.
So the 2002 incident happened on a midnight shift where the police officer was doing a building check for a burglar alarm. He was overpowered and he wound up fatally shooting one of the kids.
So this wasn't during school hours?
This wasn't during school hours. This was like 1:30 in the morning. All kinds of drugs were recovered and alcohol and some other things.
Well, but he was convicted of manslaughter.
No, he was
right?
not convicted. Actually, I went to the trial. He actually took a plea deal for no jail time. And if you're if you're on trial and the state's attorney is losing. No, and it's not.
We all looked at Ivan.
If your attorney gets the notion during deliberations that, hey, we'll offer you no jail time if you plead guilty to a lesser charge, I think you have to make a decision on what's best for your family.
No, it's called Let's Make a Deal. They do it all the time down in jail. All right, we want to run through these calls because it's lit up. Joseph, welcome to the DMV Daily Show.
Thank you. I just want to make the comment why, and I'm thinking about why school police officers are so special. Everyone forgot about the Housing Authority Police. When they implemented the Housing Authority Police, housing became one of the safest communities you could live in because they had Housing Authority Police.
Yes, sir.
And Housing Authority Police became so prolific. Remember when Poplar Grove was off the chain? Then Mayor Kurt Smoke called over there to Hezekiah Bunch, who was then chief of Housing Authority Police, and said, can you send your officers up there to clean up Poplar Grove? Because it looked like a renaissance out there. Went up there, we cleaned it out 2 weeks, along with the sheriff's office. So what I'm saying to you, concentrated police officers as school police and as was the Housing Authority Police, they become the best police officers because they're embedded in there. And we was embedded. They used to drop us off and come back and pick us up because, look, we walk foot. We became part of that community. And that's why Baltimore City homicide detectives start calling us. Because guess what? We had the information they needed. I thank you all, and I'm out of here.
Thank you, Joseph.
Awesome point, Joseph.
I think Brother Joe's right. You know, and this which is why I say we have the best school police around the country. It's just that let's not mess up something that's working good. You know.
All right. Well, speaking of officers, the officer that was on here that we talked about earlier, David Calloway, is on the line now. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I just wanted to share some of one of my experiences. I know you guys probably read the comment where I engaged in actually was an adult male who had pulled out a knife trying to stab a student he had problems with, actually at a middle and elementary school, Francis Scott Key. That wasn't my normal beat. I was actually stationed in the Westport Cherry Hill area and just happened to have been up there just to fill in. And because that gentleman pulled out that knife on the grounds during dismissal hours, I had to use my firearm or deploy my firearm, not fire it, but draw it out my holster and order him to the ground. And he said something to me. He said, I probably would have ended up stabbing that guy if he wasn't there. And he was locked up. He was charged. But he was also given other help, mental help as well. So, my help just didn't stop there, arrested him. I made sure that we followed through and I got him, some mental help as well. But it's that incident. Also recovered a Desert Eagle out of Digital Harbor. Also had 2 school state employees trapped inside of a classroom where a female had made a jagged weapon out of a clock. And I didn't use deadly force. The circumstances came for me to use deadly force, but I chose not to. But it's definitely imperative for these officers to have their service weapons on them. And think about this, not if, it's when these incidents happen. And that's how we train. It's not if, it's when.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question. Do the school police, do they have tasers?
No.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Mr. Kane. If the school police would you be amenable to having all the officers at least have a taser or a stun gun?
Again, for me, it's not about what force they have to be able to detain or so forth. I think that we really need to get to, for me, it's about how do we invest in preventative measures that really get to the systemic issues. And so I understand that we live in Baltimore City. I went to Northern High School, right? We know that this city has its issues, but it's about we will never resolve those issues if we don't get to the core problem, the root problem of them. And so while we're trying to get there, we need to continue to use our officers to do the good work that they're doing. So not only that, Baltimore City Public Schools are dealing with restorative practice. How do we not resolve conflicts with physical force or whatever, but really how can we talk our way out of this to figure out a way to use less lethal or less means than using time?
I hate to say that that's not the reality though of what's going on across this country.
Correct. And I patronize a number of different local establishments, and I'm just drawing another analogy. I don't walk into a restaurant and say, you know what, you would have more business if the cook does this. I leave that to the professionals. I eat the food. If I don't like it, I don't patronize. But I don't try to change what's working for them.
I think that's a good analogy, Sergeant Boyd, right? Because
students don't have
the thing is this, that we have laws that's in place, right? They're in place, and they have worked for 2 years.
I can tell you now that people that are hell-bent on creating mayhem don't care about the law. Well, they don't care.
Well, the question is, when is the law going to be addressed? And that's, I want to get to Lisa and Reed so we can get back to this conversation before we wrap up.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But we have legislators that are listening. Session's about to start back in January. Something needs to be done one way or the other, but we don't need to be having this discussion every year and nothing gets done because of public outcry and because of misinformation being put out there. One thing or the other needs to happen.
And we don't need to be arming teachers like they're doing in Florida.
I totally agree with you.
No, get armed.
No, I totally agree with you.
Lisa, welcome to the DMV Daily Show.
Hi, Hassan. Thank you for having me on. Hassan, I want to just say, shout out to Ivan Days. How you doing?
Hey, Lisa, how are you? My girl right there.
It's a very touchy subject, and it's a double-edged subject. And I think that somebody should come to a conclusion, and they should come to a conclusion, just like you said, now, before it happens, because it's so touchy. We don't want a child getting hurt with a gun, innocently shot. We don't want to get an officer getting overpowered and a gun taken away from him. So I'm leaning more towards tasers and expert training for these schools officials to deal with these children, because I don't feel like no parents wants that. They don't want to go send their child to school and the child ends up dead by it be accidental or just something going wrong. So it's a very touchy subject. It's a very serious subject. And like you said, somebody has to do something now. But I'm looking more like with the people being armed, having guns in school, either this officer may get overpowered. This officer may not shoot correctly, and an innocent child it would be more devastating. Well, it's going to be devastating either way to have a child lose his life, but to find out that the official that's put there that's there to protect them is actually the cause of that child's death would be just like totally heartbreaking.
And we have 41 years of we have a 51 years now of data to support that.
Y'all go traineeship.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
How you doing, sir?
I just don't understand why anyone would have a problem with a trained, certified officer having a gun. The good guys, these kids are probably going to use one of these guns in the school. And
I'm going to reference this. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes of all time, Romeo Must Die, DMX, comes out with the gun. Guns don't kill people. Stupid people with guns kill people. I ain't never seen a gun kill a person by itself in my lifetime.
Now we really have strayed into the NRA talking point section of the
and Brother Mel just called in. He didn't want to stay on because he knows we're not taking any more calls, but he said maybe we should also look at the option of the NOI coming into the schools and securing the schools.
Oh, no.
Let me tell you something. You bring the brothers from the nation up in there, them kids will be, what you're talking point, the mental health, the disciplinary procedures. What's wrong with the NOI?
Do you know NOI's history with LGBTQ kids? You think they're going to feel safe in a school with the NOI patrolling gay kids, lesbian kids?
What's their history? Tell me. Because you think that y'all made up this
anti-gay behavior.
The NOI doesn't. You're saying Minister Farrakhan does. Name one person in Baltimore from the NOI, led by my good brother, Minister Carlos Muhammad. Okay. What have they not done that's been positive impact in this city?
What I'm telling you is that I know that LGBTQ kids would not feel safe with NOI bow tie gentlemen patrolling through their schools.
Why? Because they're Muslims?
No, because the feeling.
So what if they don't wear bow ties? What if they just dress down?
I don't think it's about the bow ties. It's about the Nation of Islam. No. Well, discipline.
And they can handle
discipline manifests itself in different ways. Well, then why doesn't the NOI teach the Baltimore City school officers then? If they're able to get it done without a gun, why do they have them? And they don't have the long and storied history of anti-gay behavior and rhetoric.
I think
we're going to save that for Tell the Truth Tuesday.
Tell the Truth Tuesday.
Real fast, Brother Will called in and mentioned about how much space Baltimore City public schools have. Over almost 2 million square feet. It's a lot of space that we cover. And currently, they have
105.
How many schools we have?
163.
163 schools.
And 183 buildings.
But only 37 offices in these schools. So the fact is that
37. I thought he's at 100.
I said we have vacancies. I told you people vote with their feet, and when they feel as though they're not being protected, they go places and work.
There's only 37 out of 105.
There's the manpower dictates where the officers are assigned.
And that's my point. That whether you arm every single officer in our school, you still have a gap in security. And so what we need to really focus on is how do we come together, exercise the funds that are in Senate Bill 1265 to ensure that all of our schools and school buildings have the proper security.
How much funds was in this bill? Y'all keep talking about that. How much money was that?
Let's drill down on this. Again, when the conversation started, it started about guns in schools. It became arrest numbers. It became training. It became policies and procedures.
Great job under the leadership of Chief Ham and Dr. Santelises with firearms and a lockbox. You've been able to build those relationships where 70% of our students say, hey, we like our police officers. So you guys have done a great job under the current construct, and I think we should continue to push that forward.
And for those listening, it's not former police commissioner Leonard Ham.
No,
it's his son.
Yes.
Right. That is the new police commissioner. And so we got to wrap this up. Sergeant Boatwright, thank you so much.
Thank you for
my
having me.
main man, Mr. Kane. You got an announcement you want to make real quick?
Listen, I need some food, man. I'm hungry. I just got for work. So
that's when the announcement comes, it better be right here first.
That's right.
DMVDaily. Well,
right here.
I would like to say I'm not running for anything, and the only agenda I have is to protect our police officers.
That's right.
All right, Sarge, thank you.
And the only agenda that I have is for God, Allah, which I was taught by the great minister.
Because
they're really going. Matter of fact, I'm gonna bring Minister Carlos in here. We're gonna have that conversation.
Okay, yes,
because Minister Farrakhan was never anti-white, anti-Semitic, anti-anything. All they was
Are
pro-black.
you really telling me
Just
Minister
pro-black.
Farrakhan had nothing to say against gay folks?
No,
Okay,
absolutely
I'm
not.
gonna bring you the
Just
tapes.
that was just like me saying that he's a racist. And
No,
he's
I'm
not
gonna bring you the
racist.
tapes so you can hear them, and then you explain it to me.
I know with I come through the nation under Malcolm, not so much under the new regime, but Mr. Carlos
Farrakhan
and
has
the
gone
NOI
on many occasions about gay
would
men.
do wonders
okay?
in our school system. We
No.
gotta go.
Disaster.
Want to let you know though, this show was also brought to you by that legal dream team, Bates and Garcia. I'm telling you right now, if something gets down. If you get in a fight with the NOI, you better call police. No, you better call the
Bates and
doctors.
Garcia.
Yeah, Bates and Garcia. Specialize in criminal defense, real estate, bodily injury. Bates and Garcia. Contact them today, 410-814-4600. We're gone. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Tell the Truth Tuesday. And we're going to talk with Kelly Davis about that trial that's going on once again. Trial number 5. And so much more.
Davis.
So tune in for the Keith Davis trial tomorrow, 4 to 5 p.m., DMVDaily.news. And
Good
we're
night,
gone.
Baltimore.
Have a peace.
Hey.
Talking the day, soul at night on the new 1010 WOLB.
This check on traffic is sponsored by Compassion International. You can't change the whole world, but you can change the world for a child in poverty. Choose your child now at compassion.com/radio. There's a crash reported on the Jones Falls Expressway. It is southbound just prior to Guilford Avenue, and that's causing major tie-ups now as you make your way from North Avenue. Meanwhile, sluggish on the northbound side coming up from Fayette as you head toward Guilford. Meanwhile, there's an accident in Parkville. It's on Loch Raven Boulevard at Taylor Avenue. This weather update is sponsored by Unbound.org. A girl in Kenya dreams of becoming a doctor. An elder in Guatemala dreams of being part of a community. Reach out and change their world, and it will change your own. Unbound.org. Expecting a couple of downpours early this evening, low tonight around 52. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high close to 62. Right now, it's 66 degrees with light rainfall. I'm Tony Thornton on 1010 WOLB.
What's up? It's your boy DJ Duke.
DJ Keish.
DJ Knowledge. Catch us live, the DJ Booth Radio Show, each and every Wednesday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. live on WOLB 1010 AM radio. Live interviews, artist spotlight, trending topic, shop talk. What's up, Knowledge? What's up? Go. Keys.
Let's get it.
Hey, Keys. This week's special guest, Ashley T. Moore, 11 Hip Hop, in the building, live, tune in. Listen, also, I got Young Easy, Soul Raspberry Records on. He got a new mixtape out called The Resurrection 2. We're going to talk about it. Also, my guy, White Boy Frazier, in the building to talk about his new mixtape called White Magic. So make sure y'all tune in, download that app, WOLB Radio app. Download. Also streaming live from WOLBBaltimore.com, the DJ Booth Radio Show.
BDX Live Talk Show is now heard live every Thursday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. on 1010 a.m. BDX Live Talk Show with host Lou Fields covers business news, travel, community, politics, history, special events, and special guests. Tune in every Thursday and have lunch with Lou on WOLB 1010 a.m. BDX, the live Black Dollar Exchange, is located at www.bdx443.com. Have lunch with Lou every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. BDX Live Talk Show on 1010 a.m.
Paralyzed Veterans of America, National Service Officers.
We've got an entire generation of men and women who have seen war. They're going to need voices.
Paralyzed Veterans of America represents them.
We're going to make sure that the Veterans Affairs gives them everything that they're entitled to.
Get all the health care they need.
Making a person's house adaptable.
And we also focus on getting them a job.
We help our veterans for free.
Changing lives, building futures. That's Paralyzed Veterans of America. To learn more, visit PVA.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore. The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
The following program is a rebroadcast. When you hear phone numbers, please do not call. 1010